Hello, welcome to another edition of Atomic Mass Transmissions Live. I am John, and today I'm continuing work on the diorama that I started last week. So one of my favorite lightsaber duels in all of Star Wars was when Yoda first busts out the lightsaber at the end of Attack of the Clones, and he fights against Dooku. So with Yoda coming up here really soon, I thought it would be great to do a little bit of a diorama, and this is going to be part 2 of that. I started out the basic construction of everything last week, so if you missed that, make sure to check out the videos that are posted down below and on our Twitch channel. And today I'm just gonna kind of continue. I did some work off camera by myself, just trying to get a little bit more of this pressed on, and I will share some of the techniques that I used for that. But a lot of it is today's gonna be based around painting it and just trying to figure out the overall composition of the colors and all that sort of thing. So let's switch over to the miniatures and we will get started. Move this light down a little bit more so we can kind of see what's going on. So you can see here that I have opted to go with a big solid wall back behind the two miniatures. I kind of chose that because the scene itself has got a lot of kind of deep reds that are kind of set up. It's set on Geonosis, so there's a lot of kind of like rusty deep oranges and reds on there. And I think that would be a really nice contrast with Yoda's lightsaber and also with Yoda's green skin. I haven't gotten a chance to paint Yoda yet, but you can kind of see how he is placed here. So I've gone through and primed this up a little bit, and I'll talk a little bit about the construction of it all. Just to remind people that missed last time, I went through the process of showing you how to magnetize the miniatures here, so you can remove them and put them if you wanted to. You could snap them onto a miniature base, so you can still play with those in a game, should you so decide. I'll do the same thing for Yoda as well. But let's talk about this part of it right here. So I've got a kind of in-progress picture that I started last time. And this can kind of shed a little bit of insight into what I did to create this. So the texture and the forms that are in the background are kind of largely based off of what you saw in that scene at the very end. After Dooku kind of whoops up on Obi-Wan and Anakin, Yoda comes in afterwards and drives him off. But the interior of that chamber has like this really cool mixture of like natural rock caverns and kind of more kind of carved stone that's in there. So what I did is, you can kind of see in this picture up on the upper right there, I set this up so I've got this main central plinth. I'll just try to point at it from underneath right up here. That main central area there, this is just made out of insulation foam. So I carved that down first with a hobby knife and then kind of sanded it smooth with different grits of sandpaper, ending with, hold on one second, let me check. Aha, I'm back. I started off with 80 grit sandpaper just to get all the rough forms in there, and then 400 grit extra fine after that to smooth it all out really nicely. And then I took a bit more of that insulation foam and I kind of carved it up to make this like rough, rocky texture that's going to be along the sides there. Finally, the central section right here, this panel in the middle, was made with plasticard. And I chose that just so I could get a nice, real thin, uniform thickness on it. I don't know if you can kind of see it in profile there. And I spackled that with some tile filler compound adhesive, sanded tile grout. You can see right there, just some of that stuff. So I kind of talked a little bit about that last time by just taking a sponge. You can kind of sponge that that texture onto a piece of foam core or something similar to get that really cool texture in there. So that's going to be a nice and kind of rocky texture that we'll have for the rest of it. So I glued all this stuff down to the base. And one point of note here is that for all of this foam work, you can't really just prime it straight up with regular spray primer. You have to use either a special spray primer or use an airbrush or just use acrylic paints. So I chose to prime up the base section here and this back cap that goes around the back, which is actually made out of the top of a spray can lid. I just kind of chopped up one of these and placed it on there, and then sanded down the edges. So I attached that first, and it was just about the right circumference as the rest of this circle to match it pretty well. And then I sunk in the foam and things afterwards. So I primed it first so I didn't have to get any spray paint over top of it. And then for all these individual foam pieces, I think it's a really good idea if you take some wood glue or white glue Elmer's, whatever you have at hand, and just paint a coat of that stuff over top of it. That's going to seal in the foam a little bit. It's going to make it a little bit more durable, but most importantly, it makes it so the surface of which cannot be affected by super glue. If you just use regular super glue on foam, it kind of eats away at it and does some weird, unpredictable things. So if you put a coat of that stuff over top, let it dry first. Putting a coat of white glue or wood glue is what I typically use. It's a little bit more durable. That will make it so that the surfaces can then be super glued into and onto the rest of the base. So that was very handy, rather than having to wait for like wood glue or white glue or something to attach to it. So yeah, so that is essentially where I'm at right now. I will take off this kind of in progress picture here, and then I can get into starting painting the whole thing. So I'll just leave these miniatures off to the side here. I guess before I get started with that, I'll just show a little bit about the texture generation here on this pink foam. So I've got a piece of pink foam right here. This is just regular insulation foam. And to get that kind of rocky texture, it's really pretty easy. You can just use an X-Acto knife to score in a bunch of kind of crisscross hatched lines, and then you can just chip away at this, and it will create some irregular kind of cool rocky textures for you. And it's great for terrain. Certainly is a little bit messy as you go about it, but once you get it down to a level that you really like how the texture is looking, and it's starting to get that kind of rocky appearance that you really want. Let's see if you can pick that up on the camera a little bit. Sealing it with a little bit of that white glue will definitely help out quite a bit. So it's something that is just pretty straightforward, pretty simple, but it's just this kind of chipping away at the pink foam itself can get you a realistic looking rock texture, kind of like we've got going on here on the interior of these walls. This is going to dry brush up really nicely and should show off that texture very well and look pretty accurate to what I want it to be in the end. So yeah, there you have it. Yeah, it does look like we have a lot of X-Wing chatter in here. So yeah, so we've got lots of reveals coming up for X-Wing. There's certainly a lot of people that are very excited about the Fury of the First Order and the BTA Y-Wing for the Resistance that we just announced today. All the pre-orders and stuff are up for those. So if you want to go to the web store, you can certainly pre-order yours coming up. So we'll have more Separatist stuff coming up for Legion. That's going to be coming up next week. So we'll start in on next Friday, and then we'll have a number of different reveals for all of that content coming up after that. You're going to have to wait on all the Kylo points and everything else until later. I can't talk about any of that stuff right now. So have that. Anything else in here? Any other general questions? I'm sure everybody's just very excited to get some more of a scoop on some X-Wing stuff. But trust me, there's lots of stuff to show off, and there's going to be lots and lots of stuff for you to check out next week for those new releases. And yeah, I've been kind of scheming and making lists with that stuff myself, and thinking about how to do it. I've been playing First Order for a while, and I really like the faction quite a bit, and I think that the addition of a bomber to them is going to be really cool. Lots of cool stuff going on. So anyway, let's get back to some painting. We're going to work a little bit more on this this diorama here. So the floor section here is kind of a mixture of different grays. But before I get started with that, I want to just get the base of all of the back of that cavern drying. So for that, I'm going to use a nice kind of dark purpley red. And for that, I like African Shadow for that. We'll get that down as our base coat. Of course, glad to answer any sort of questions. We'd love to share all this information as soon as we can, but there's a bit of a strategy to the whole thing, and a bit of an order to it, and coordination with a lot of different people. So we'll share it as soon as we are able to, of course. And a lot of people are very excited about new stuff coming up. There's been a number of delays and things that have affected quite a few of our products, and I think everybody's just really eager to see their game get the next big thing. So we'll share it with you as soon as we are able. I'm just going to base coat all this area in here with a big, nice, kind of messy brush. I think I'm going to have a little bit of a color variation between the center panel right here and the side bits, and then also the cavern walls. But I think for everything, just to kind of get a unified color underneath all of this, I just want to put down a nice, good base coat across all this stuff. And then we'll see how fast the terrain painting goes. It might be that I actually get to spend a little bit of time working on Yoda as well. Try to get this wrapped up. Of course, we all play these games too. We're very invested in them, and we love them quite a bit. So it's we definitely want to keep everything going and keep a lot of new exciting things coming up on the horizon for all of our games. So we're just going to base coat all of that stuff down there first. I think while this is still a little bit wet, I might just go ahead and throw in a little bit of a lighter color just to try to get a little bit of a fade going on. I'm going to jump up to something kind of a pretty big jump. So I'm going to go all the way up here to this orange leather color, which is kind of a burnt orange, as you would expect. And while that paint is still wet, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of brush this stuff in over top and just kind of feather it down. One thing I do need is a paper towel. Take off some of the excess off of my brush here, and then I can just kind of use that to feather the rest of this down. Get a bit of that blend going on. And I think that'll provide like a good, nice initial kind of backdrop for these characters. I'll certainly go in and dry brush and highlight some of this stuff a little bit more, but I think by and large I just want to have, kind of that orange to kind of purpley fade going on. Maybe we'll introduce a little bit more red in there as well. Imperials and Rebels to get more love. Yeah, well, we certainly got some more stuff planned for that. But for right now, I think it's we've got a lot of separatists, and we have the wave that has all of the Kashyyyk stuff coming up. So we'll be announcing that next week, and then we'll have some more stuff coming up for Mini Stravaganza, a bunch of other things coming up there too. Okay, so when it comes to this floor section, I think the basic color of the floor. Oh, I forgot. These rocks here are kind of the same color, so I might as well just kind of throw a. This is like areas of the ceiling that Dooku kind of pulled down to try to squash poor Yoda with, but he wasn't having it, as we all know. A slightly smaller brush in here to try to paint in some of these bits. Well, hey, Hurricane Girl, thank you so much for kind words. We certainly like to try to keep everybody appraised as to what's coming up and what we have going on. So we like talking to y'all too. It's fun. We do all these live streams every week, and it's fun to engage with the community. It's fun to just kind of hang out and share the enthusiasm for all this cool Star Wars and Marvel stuff that we do. It's it's as rewarding for us as it is for you guys. Yeah, that is true. Like we did just release not too long ago. We had Callus and Lando and the AA5 and the Lat. So this wave is all about Kashyyyk and all the cool stuff that you saw in Kashyyyk. But we like to throw a bone to all the different factions whenever we can. So certainly stuff planned for all the factions in the future. So just kind of throwing down a hasty base coat here. I think for the floor section itself, they have kind of like this alternating gray pattern. But I think for that, what I'm going to try to do is I'm just going to kind of stipple on like a little bit of a random pattern on there first, and then I'll just use a little bit of glazing over top of the alternating panels to kind of make them stand out a little bit. So I can get a little bit of texture in there, a little bit of variation on the ground cover, and have that kind of carry through from tile to tile. I added a little bit of this stuff down here. I'm not going to get too precious with this base coat because I know that the spongy part that I'm going to be doing next here for the back of the cavern walls, or on the floor, I mean, is going to be it's going to be a little bit messy. I'm going to go a little bit outside the line, so I'm not going to get too caught up with that. I'll just try to throw down a little quick base coat on top of all this stuff. That little bit first. And I think that when you were looking to do the kind of final finish on this, on a diorama like this, this is just regular black primer. But invariably, as you're handling this thing, you're going to go outside the lines, other things like that. So I would recommend that if you're doing this sort of thing, that you apply a flat coat of black as like kind of like your last step, just to tidy up everything and make it look a little bit cohesive and uniform in the color. When you're kind of doing these sections that just kind of bleed off into nothing, or a diorama like this, where the scenery elements kind of bleed off of the base. I think for primer, there's a lot of different stuff. I mean, I've had a lot of good luck with just stuff I get from home improvement stores. You just want to make sure that you get a nice flat primer. You don't want to get any glossy ones or anything like that. It'll do weird stuff to your paints in general. So that stuff works pretty well. There's lots of stuff from dedicated manufacturers of miniatures that I've had good experience with. So yeah, it's tough to like recommend just one because I kind of just like pick them for the colors in a lot of cases. Like if I want a rusty red, I can get this kind of red primer from a home improvement store. If I'm using white, I like to use a brand from a miniature company that gives me a nice nice flat result. And there's lots of different stuff you could go with. So you have to kind of pick and choose and figure out which one works out best for you. And also just what's available, because it's tough for me to make a recommendation for people when you know, it might just not be available in their country. If I had a budget of $200 and I own the core set, which core set are we talking about? Are we talking about the Clone Wars one or um, the Vader and Luke one? That will inform my decision. Well, let's say it's the Clone Wars one. For me, the next thing that I would buy is I'm a Separatist player. And if I was gonna, boy, that's kind of tough. I have to budget it all out in my head and think about all the costs of all these things. I would definitely need to add another core unit, so I would pick up a unit of B2s. I would pick up a specialist kit because there's lots of really cool options in there. That's about 50 bucks. Then from there, I really like the BX droids. I think they're pretty solid. I tend to make lists that have kind of like a lot of one particular rank type in them. For Separatists, it's less of a deal because you have lots of ways to control your order pool, but for other armies that don't have the luxury of the coordination and all that sort of stuff, having things of a similar rank in your army is definitely pretty good because you just get a little bit more order control when you pull that special forces token. You know that you can use it on one of 3 units potentially. So I kind of like that that general approach. I'm just going to take this sponge. It's my old terrain sponge that I've used for a bajillion projects. And I'm just going to sponge this on there pretty heavily first. So I want everything to be kind of like nice and light first. And then we can do some sponging of some a lighter color over top of this. And I think when I get down into these cracks and crevices and areas, I'm probably just going to have to go in here and paint this in because the sponge can't quite get in there. I really want it to be. Yeah, the BX units are super cool. I would definitely pick up Maul because Maul is not only amazing in the game, but he's an amazing character. Really, really cool. I don't know how much I'm up to at this point. So let me see. BX droids and Maul is about 50. So I'm about $100. I got about another $100 left. What would be next? Another unit of B2s probably. And probably 2 units of Stap Riders, and I'd probably call that done. I like the Staps a lot because they just give you a lot of control over your order pool. They allow you to throw out some stuff to other units. Another unit of the BX droids would give me enough options to fill out all of my special forces slots. I don't know, there's so many different avenues you can go down when it comes to army building, it's really Kind of up to you what you really like. I was doing the clone side of that. I think I liked the clone ATRT a lot. I think that is a really cool kit and is really fun. ARC Troopers would definitely be on the list. Phase 2 Troopers, I like those. I like the hard plastic version of the core units. So I'd probably pick up a couple of those. It's hard to pass up Rex. I like Padme in that. And probably R2. I would probably get R2 in there too. R2 in the Crashed Escape Pod. Then I could double up on some secret mission shenanigans and try to beat people in a different little mini game that I'm playing. I think those are always fun. I don't know if anybody's really had a chance to play with those characters. I imagine a lot of you have, but you know, um, Padme and R2, people just kind of doing their own little secret missiony stuff is it's kind of a fun little thing to have going on in the game. Same as Bounty, Cad Bane, and Boba Fett, that stuff. Yeah, I don't blame you. I would definitely get your hands on Maul's. He gets snatched up pretty quick. I know that all the reprints and stuff are in progress. We're trying to get everything back out to everybody as fast as we can. So while this paint is still wet, I think I'm just going to continue to do a little bit of that wet blending. I like to do that as just a basis while I am. I know that I want this to be a little bit darker towards the back of all this whole section back in here. So I'm not being really precious with this painting step. I know that I'm always going to go back in here and touch all this stuff up. I'm just trying to get the color laid down first. I think half of this process is also just figuring out like, well, what is going to look good with the miniatures over top of it, and how's it really going to pop out. So I like the idea of kind of going a little bit cooler on the floor because we've got some warm tones in the background there. I'm going to mix up a little bit of this anthracite gray. I use it pretty often. It's one of my favorite colors, so I like it quite a bit. Nice kind of bluish gray. We'll mix that up. I'm going to put a little dab of black. Yeah, sorry, I don't really know about the status for reprints. I think that the best people to contact would be the people in your country that handle all the distribution. So Asmodee, you could certainly send some emails to customer service, and they can probably give you a little bit better insight than I could. We just recently reprinted the LAT and the HMP gunship for X-Wing. And I saw that ARC Troopers are back in stock. But that's North America, so I'm not sure exactly what country you're in. It's going to differ a little bit from country to country. Yeah, glad to help. Yeah, contacting Asmodee will probably give you a little bit better insight than we could provide as far as availability of products go. Starting to get a little bit of that fade going on in there. Gotta kind of smooth it out a little bit more. While this paint is still wet, just gonna go ahead and do that. A little bit of variation in the colors here. I think this is why I like painting terrain so much, is that it's kind of messy and fun. You don't get so like tense and uptight about all the little tiny details. You can just kind of dry brush and it all just turns out great that way. I think that's why I like to paint terrain probably more than anything else. Thanks, BK, for letting them know about the sales and distribution page. That's a good source of info for people. And then just dab a little bit of water here, and then just kind of smooth out those edges. You'll notice that I'm just kind of using this like real kind of quick stabby motion here to just kind of pull my brush in some different directions just to try to hide the brush strokes a little bit. I'm not really too concerned about a perfect blend at this point, but I also don't want it to look like too painterly, I guess. go with a little bit more of this lighter right here at the very edges of it. Now we will go back in over top of this and add some glazes over top of these panels to make them look a little bit more distinct. And probably chase in some of these other. But before I get too far, I kind of want to put the miniatures on top of it and just check the colors and see how that's going. I think it's a generally good practice when you're mocking up things that are, you know, intended to be standing on scenery like these dioramas, to just every once in a while just go back in, take the miniatures over top, put them down over top of it, and just kind of see how it's all going together. Smooth out this dark area here just a little bit. Some better light on this so people can see it a little bit better. There we go. Looks a little better. The inspiration for the scenery is the duel between Dooku and Maul at the end of Attack of the Clones. And they're kind of pursuing Maul after they had that kind of epic battle out on the fields of Geonosis. And they're pursuing Maul. Anakin and Obi-Wan kind of confront him. Anakin kind of lets his temper get in the way, and it's kind of hastily dealt with. And then just when you think all hope is lost, Yoda kind of comes in from the side. I'm sure you've seen it. Oh, did I say Maul? Sorry, I meant, yeah, Dooku and Yoda. All right, so let's see how these miniatures are going to look over top of this. I know it's kind of hard to tell with Yoda not being painted yet, but that's all right. We're going to have these two characters here. So having that kind of dark color, I think it's, you know, Dooku's cape is going to kind of blend in a little bit with this backdrop, I think. But I still like the direction it's going. I kind of like the atmosphere. It looks kind of dark and moody. And I think that I can do some kind of fun stuff with the lightsabers too. Do some kind of reflected light. Now Yoda's is pretty far off. Maybe I'll have like a little hint of green or something down underneath over here. Sorry, I'm just reading something from Onupa. The diagonal arc lines on the ship base is an early prototype mistake. I'm not exactly sure. We'd have to look into that. All right. So yeah, that's kind of how that's shaping up. So I definitely need to have a little bit more contrast on the walls and some of these other sections. Yeah, they are definitely magnetized. They're set up. I drilled and put some magnets in the bottom of their feet, so I can now take it so I can attach, you know, these miniatures to bases, and I can use them in a standard game if I wanted to. I like to, you know, play with all these guys too, so having that as an option was pretty important to me. So I decided to take the extra time to sink some magnets into their feet. I did the same thing for Yoda as well. Got a little, I think these are 3 30-second size magnets. And yeah, and have like another magnet kind of sunk into here. Looks pretty cool. Yeah, I like how it's all kind of coming together. I think this will be a nice little thing to put on my shelf when I'm not playing games with these characters, and it just kind of recreates, you know, that lightsaber duel that I remember seeing that in the theaters. Everybody just lost their minds once Yoda pulled out a lightsaber and started flipping around. It was so cool. It was just a fond memory of mine, and I just wanted to pay homage to it. A little diorama time. And also, I guess it's a good time to mention that we are planning on doing some a diorama challenge in one of our monthly painting challenges for My Star Wars Legion in the future. So certainly have some information about that in the forthcoming months. Something worth checking out, and maybe something to plan for if you wanted to try something similar to this, like maybe recreating one of your favorite scenes, a cool duel. We were talking about this last time, like what people's favorite lightsaber duels are. A bunch of really cool ones came up. I'm just going to add just a little bit more highlight out to this edge here. And blend that back. Oh yeah, Diorama with Super Tactical Droids. We'll be showing off all that stuff next week. And that kit has some really cool options in it. It's not just another beefier attack droid. He's got his own command cards and all sorts of cool stuff. Okay, so let's add a little bit more shading to this back wall back here. And to do that, I'm gonna kind of go a little bit cooler. I'm gonna use a little bit of that cooler gray that I used before. So a little bit of this anthracite gray, a little bit of black in there as well. I mix a little bit of the African shadow in there to create a color. I can kind of show you how this looks. We're kind of talking about this color right here. Nice and kind of dark, deep purple. I'm just going to add a little bit of that in here on the sides, just to make this column pop out a little bit more on either side here. You know, now that I think about it, I'm actually going to use this color. I want this kind of central column to kind of stand out a little bit. So I'm just going to apply a little bit of a wash over top of it, just by taking that same color and just thinning it way down, just to tint it and make it just stand out just a little bit more. Put a little bit more shadow in there. Well, add just a little bit more of this kind of shading in here underneath some of these rocks too. Build up some of the shadow a little bit. I'd like to have that fade going on though, so I definitely want it to kind of be real punchy up here at the top. It's kind of real bright, kind of orange up here. We'll use that orange to kind of dry brush some of these other areas down here too. I'm just going to kind of blend that in by kind of applying a little bit of just a strong color up here at the top. And then I can just dip my brush in a little bit of water and feather out the edge. Blend it down. Grab a different brush for that. A little bit better point on it. And I think just to make these edges stand out a little bit more, I'll just put a little kind of edge highlight. Side too. And just a little bit of this color down on these lower rocks too, just to kind of carry in a little bit of that same colors. I'm just going to mix together a little bit of that African shadow and the red leather here. Just go in and highlight some of these. Yeah, Anupa, I'll have to check in on that. I'm not exactly sure about it. I understand what you're talking about as far as the corner marks on the bases. I'll have to take a look. No problem. I like how this is kind of popping out a little bit more. The sheen that's on that back wall is kind of interfering a little bit with how you can see it, but I think this is looking pretty good. Going in the right direction, I think. And there are just like a few these little scratches and little bits here that are on the foam that I wanted to keep just because I kind of like how it makes it look a little bit more organic. I'm just going to put like a slight little highlight underneath one of those just to make them pop out a little bit more and look a little bit more deliberate. These lines are a little thicker than I want them to be though, so I'll go back in, shave them back down. Some of that African shadow in there. A little bit more of that color over here on the side. And then I think I have a decision to make here on the very edges of these walls. Like if I actually want to paint them like they've just been cut off on the very edges. They kind of wrap around a little bit, but there is a nice flat edge there. I kind of cut it off in such a way that I could just shave it down. But that won't be until like the very end. I think after I've gone through and kind of applied a lot of these highlights and things, um, I'm invariably going to go outside the rim and some of these other sections here. Like, I don't really want to keep that how it currently stands. So I'll save that kind of blackout stage for like the very final, almost like when you're painting like a base rim on a miniature. It's kind of like the last, at least it is for me anyway, one of the last stages. I'll just punch this up just a little bit more. I really want to kind of push that contrast and like that really bright orange up here at the very top of this. Oh, cool. Well, thanks. I'm having fun with it. I like doing diorama stuff and like scenery stuff quite a bit. It's one of my favorite things to do. It's nice like not getting caught up with the gaminess of something, and you just focus on the aesthetics of the miniature and trying to tell a little story. So yeah, dioramas and this kind of thing have got a special place in my heart for sure. Okay, and I want to get a little bit more contrast here in the back wall and this kind of central column. So I'm going to try to go in there. I'm going to glaze it in with a little bit of this red leather. Hopefully that's going to be kind of reddish enough that it make it kind of stand out and be a little bit separated from some of the other colors that surround it. Got about 20 minutes left, so just kind of keep chipping away at this. I don't think I'll necessarily finish it up to the level that I really want it to be, but be just a fun project to work on, and I'll post a picture online when I get it all finished. Probably use it for the placeholder picture for the painting challenge that has to do with dioramas, so you can see it then. I'm going to thin this down pretty thin. I was kind of like glazing it in here a little bit. And yeah, I like how that's already going to be a little bit more reddish, but I want to kind of thin that down just a little bit. Info for First Order and Resistance, I think, starts on Monday. Got a couple posts planned across the whole week, so there should be lots of stuff for you. glaze this color in there a little bit. I like how this is going to make these sections kind of stand out from one another. So maybe I'll even add a little hints of this kind of color here in the center. It's a way that I like to paint scenery, I think, is just to kind of layer up a bunch of different colors over top of one another and then kind of unify them with the dry brush with a little bit more contrast and stuff. With a little bit of those reddish tones down here kind of towards the bottom. I like this color palette a lot. I think it's just oranges and purples and rusty reds and things. Some inspiration from the American Southwest. Some places in Italy. Cool. Okay, well, while that's drying, I'm going to transition back to the floor. And now I'm going to start to sponge on a little bit of that those lighter tones, just to get that pattern kind of going in there a little bit. Kind of mottled, marbly kind of pattern in here. And I think as I get closer to these rocks, I'm going to have to use something a little bit smaller, so I'll transition over to a brush. A bit of a frayed tip on there, a little bit of a stippling brush that I'll use. Starting to see a little bit of the mottled texture here. Yeah, I can't talk about anything that we haven't announced yet. That is just company policy. Yeah, we want to keep people focused on the cool stuff. I mean, we just announced a bunch of cool stuff today. For X-Wing, we're going to have a bunch of more things to talk about next week. Cool, so that's looking pretty good. And then I'll transition over here to, let me find a kind of ratty brush here. Chris, did you not see the Facebook announcements today for Fury of the First Order and the BTA and R2 Y-Wing for the Resistance? Or are you pulling my leg? I feel like you're more informed than that. You must know what's going on. Oh, well, check out social media, man. So most of these like more diamond shaped panels are a little bit darker. So I'll use a glaze over top of those to kind of pick those out. Let's do a little bit of stippling with another slightly darker color just to get a little bit of variation. And you can also use this kind of stage to just touch up a little bit of any areas on the stippling job that you thought were a little, I don't know, maybe a little sloppy or a little weird. It's Josh and me. I bet you're already filled in some rules questions. There's spicy numbers in there. lost the feed for a second. I forgot that it's a little delayed from what I see and what I'm doing versus what you... Seems like everything's still going. We're still painting bases. Yeah, I'm excited about those too. I think points updates are going to be pushed to September now. I know the guys are working on it right now. But we'll have more info for you. Probably around mini extravaganza time. I think I need to go one more on top of that. I think the stippling is just going to look a little bit better if it's a little bit more multi-layered. Looks a little bit less deliberate in some spots. You can see just how nasty this brush is. It's just like really frayed out and pretty junky. And as I go, I like to kind of turn it in my hand a little bit just to get a little bit more varied. And while this is still wet, it kind of blends together a little bit too, so it gives you a little bit more of a mottled texture. And then we'll glaze, and we can put a little bit of a wash down over top of this that will kind of join it all together. It's kind of similar to what Schick was doing on Wednesday. He was doing some urban camo with a bunch of shades of blue. And though the jump is like pretty dramatic in some of these colors here, I think that having that glaze that goes over top will help kind of tie some things in together. I'm just going to stipple a little bit more heavily with this lighter color here towards the edge. Okay, and now let's do a little bit of glazing. Wait till that dries a little bit. So before I start my glazing steps, I'm going to go through here and just tidy up these rocks a little bit, any of these little areas that I got a little bit of the gray paint on. Here as well. Man, how the time flies. It's already 3:50 right now. A little bit more of the paint in here in some of these spots. I think while that floor is drying a little bit more too, I'm going to go ahead and apply a bit of a dry brush over top of this just to make it kind of pop a little bit. Get some of these textures going and see how that's going to look. So I'm going to take that brightest color that I had and I'm going to mix just a little bit of an off-white with it. To make a color, it's kind of a... You see just how messy my palette is right now. This is just how I'm painting scenery. It's just kind of fun this way. Yeah, I'm going for something a little bit akin to that. So I'm going to take off all the excess paint off of my brush here so I have hardly any on it. And then starting from the top, I'm just going to pull straight down because I kind of want it to look like the light is coming from up above. And we're really just trying to pick out a little bit of these textures and these little bits of the wall. But a lot of the concentration is going to be up here kind of towards the top and then fade back down. And if the contrast is a little bit too severe, I can always go back in and kind of glaze it back down and kind of dry brush it to get it to like knock it down a little bit. I like to hit this kind of from multiple angles. It's just going to add a little bit of that contrast. So I don't really want to get all the way down here in this crevasse. I want that to be nice and dark. I want this orange to really kind of pop up here towards the top of the. Get this back on camera here so you can see it. Sometimes I get so lost in my own little world sitting here painting that I forget that there are people watching. A bit more. Go for a little bit higher contrast, really get this to kind of punch out a little bit. I'm just barely putting any pressure here. I don't really want to get any sort of brush strokes or anything in here. Just really want this to kind of catch the very raised area. We should carry some of this down onto the rocks too, just so they look consistent. We haven't announced that yet. I think that we're going to have information about that in August. So, kind of working out the exact time frame for a lot of that stuff. Yeah, we'll be posting and let everybody know. We'll certainly make a big deal of it. So yeah, expect news for the next mini extravaganza coming up in the next couple of weeks, probably. Cool. So we're starting to get a little bit of that atmosphere that we want, a little bit of that lighting, and makes it, some of these little areas pop. I spent a little bit of time on the floor, and then I will unfortunately have to call it quits for the day. I'm just going to thin down some black. I use a little bit of glazed medium here that I have. And then all of these panels in here, thin that down just a little bit more. And all these alternating panels here are going to be just a little bit darker. I'm going to start in with each of those. Then I think the final step for this is I'll probably be spending a little bit of time going through and chasing in all of the little lines that I carved into the plastic card for the base here. Try to accentuate this pattern a little bit. I did spend a fair amount of time carving it all out, so I just want to make sure to show it off, get noticeable. here. And I'll go back through after I've applied this. There's like little bits of grain and grit and things down here, a little bit of sand that I applied. And I'll pick that out with a little bit of the those kind of rusty red colors that we use for the walls and these other rocks. But I just want to get this kind of layer down first. All these little bits glazed in. Looking pretty cool. I think a big part of what's going to sell this floor texture is actually just chasing in all of the channel lines and things with just pure black. I think that's going to really define the pattern a lot better. Yeah, the base of this is just a juice bottle lid. And yeah, I used a bunch of found stuff. I think some of that's the most fun for building up these dioramas. A little bit of insulation foam. This is the back of a spray can lid. Juice, this is a piece of plastic card. Or sheet styrene, I guess, depending on what part of the country you're in. Cool. Yeah, we're excited about the next mini extravaganza too. We got lots of cool stuff to show off, lots of hobby panels planned. Get to hang out with people and just stream non-stop for 3 days. It's definitely a good time. Yeah, I've got a couple minutes left, so I'm just going to go ahead and spend the rest of that time just chasing in these lines as well as I can. Just some straight black. Just to kind of help define this pattern a little bit better. And I will certainly spend some more time kind of refining some of these details and, you know, just keep work chipping away at it until it's feel like it's in a place where I'm happy with it. No real goal with this. I'm not really trying to enter this in a competition or anything. It's just something that I want to put on the shelf. Remind me of a cool moment in cinematic history. You have a nice place for these miniatures to rest when they're not on the battle. And if I make any sort of mistakes here, I can just, before it dries, I can just kind of wipe that lightly away. I can still kind of keep it down in the cracks there. Anakin and Obi-Wan in a hot tub. I don't seem to remember that from the films. I think an Obi-Wan and Grievous diorama would be cool. I could get into that. I also have plans to do, I'm going to take an ATST and turn it into like a little Ewok shanty, like, you know, post Endor, Return of the Jedi, you know, like these ruined ATSTs. I think those Ewoks would probably like turn those into little houses and stuff, wouldn't they? Maybe they wouldn't. Who knows? But I think it'd be a fun little thing to have like some little Ewoks chilling in there. I'd have to sculpt some Ewoks, but that'd be kind of fun. Cool. That is a pretty good amount of progress, and it's getting in a direction where I can really start to think about how all this stuff is going to look in its final form. So that is where we got to today. I think it's looking pretty cool. I definitely see some areas here that I want to punch up some contrast. I think once I actually get some paint on Yoda, that's going to inform some decisions. And then kind of as a final step, I think it's going to be, adding a little bit of these lightsaber effects in here and around there, like a little bit of this reddish glow from Dooku. He's obviously got a little bit on his clothing himself, so some of that should carry down into the area around it. A little bit of green over here, hinting out. I think it'll make a nice contrast. I might even do a little bit of something here on the base, so it's just not this kind of flat black. I kind of like how it kind of pushes your eye up into the actual scene itself, but yeah, that's a decision for another day. So thank you all for joining me so much. Had a wonderful time, as always. Let me switch back over here so you can see my face for a brief moment. Hello again. Yeah, so thanks again for sticking around and checking out my diorama, the second portion of it. We'll be back here next week, Tuesday through Friday. We got lots of stuff planned. I believe that BK is probably going to be posting a schedule, I think, this weekend that'll kind of lay out all of the stuff that we have planned for next week. So make sure to check our social media for that. Lots of new reveals for Star Wars X-Wing next week, and also some new stuff for the Separatists, as well as the Wookiee Fluttercrafts. Make sure to stay tuned. So have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you next time.